welcome to the Love Positivism podcast. I'm your host, Shireen, and I'm the creator of Love Positivism. I'm here to help you on your spiritual and healing journey. I am a certified yoga and meditation teacher, a student of Chinese medicine, a doula, a Reiki practitioner, and a passionate, highly sensitive person. I want to use my knowledge to channel information and messages for you to grow on all levels. Hi, and welcome to this week's episode. Thank you so much for being here. I'm so grateful for you and for all your lovely reviews. I read them all. I'm so grateful for them on iTunes and just the feedback I'm getting. I'm so happy, and I'm so glad to be able to share these amazing guests that I love talking to, that I grow so much from and learn so much from. So I'm really happy that you're here today. And before I'm gonna present today's guest, I just want to make a quick announcement. I've been spending the past year writing my very first book, and it's gonna be out in June, but it's already available to pre-order right now. So if you type in Love Positivism on Amazon or any other platform, you can find it and already pre-book it. And it's a book that is very practical and hands-on, and where I go through every pillar of the Love Positivism framework and how I've been working with mindfulness and everything that I've been teaching and practicing. So I just wanted to let you know, and if you have any questions, please connect with me and I will let you know. And I'm so glad to be able to present today's guest, Eva Williams. The talk we had was so amazing. We have truly connected on so many levels in the work that we're doing, especially in the divine feminine area of life. And we both work with the body, embodiment, but also with breathwork. So she is the creator of Golden Lotus, and that's a series of meditations and movement practices and sexual and spiritual energy education that cultivates spiritual awakening and sexual activation and embodiment sovereignty. And these practices focus on energetic anatomy and to cultivate, purify the body through ancient techniques. And she uses practices and techniques that include meditation, yoga, qigong, dance, breathwork, jade eggs, and everything that is divine feminine. And it's so beautiful. I learned so much from her, from this conversation, and I think it's such an important work, such an important thing for us to learn as well, to truly understand the full embodiment of the feminine. So I really hope that you enjoyed this episode. Please let me know if you have any questions or connect with Eva from the links in the show notes. And don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel, where I also have posted meditations as well as a yoga class for the sacral chakra. So enjoy this week's episode. Hi Eva, welcome to the podcast.
Hi Shireen, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for being here. I want to start by asking you how you stay mindful and present.
Thank you. I think in my day-to-day, mindfulness and presence is very related to ritual for me. I find that if I make all of the small actions I do a sort of a form of ritual, that it allows me to continuously pause, break, collect, and move on. So if I make a cup of tea, I just stay present while I'm doing it. I begin the process and then I end it and I close it. If I sit down at a table, I organize the things. I sit down I open the working session, it's just kind of a sense of maintaining clear spaces throughout the day so that you know when something has closed as an energy and that you really know when something's opened. And I find that the more that I do that, irrespective of whether that's a 3-hour block or a 2-minute hand washing, it allows me that moment of contemplation as you open something and that moment of contemplation as you close something. And this is an aspect of ritual that I try to bring into my day to day.
That is so beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that. I love that idea of ritual and making like simple daily life things to rituals instead of like patterns that we're not aware of. So I really like that concept. Thank you for sharing. And yeah, I'm excited to talk to you today. Maybe you can start by sharing with the listeners who you are and what you are doing in life.
Sure. So my name is Eva Williams. I am a somaticist and I own Golden Lotus or Golden Lotus DXB. And this is a company that I've developed, which is really, it's a modality that works with women through movement and then also body work and birth work at 3 different levels to assist women to feel more comfortable in their instinct and in their body. And so the whole body of work has been built in such a way to usher us from where I see most women sort of being in their day-to-day life in terms of the connection that they have with their body. It takes us from this level of really beginning to awaken awareness, purify our body, draw attention into the pelvis. So really allowing ourselves to be in our sexuality without strange exchanges or, without expectation or anything that we've set up in society to be related to sexuality. It's really about being in that space just for you and recognizing what lives there as an emotional center for you. And then we move through these different phases of just awakening this feminine consciousness, which is really dormant in our medical models and is quite dormant in most of our society. So it's just about making that really easy to access and awakening the power in that, because it's easy to access, but it's incredibly powerful. So that's what I've been doing for the last... Golden Lotus has existed for 4 years, but for the last 10 years I've been studying and doing body work, and I'm currently doing a doctor of osteopathy. And it's kind of my life work is how can we be more comfortable within our bodies, and particularly as that pertains to women and women's health.
So what started your interest and passion for this work that you're doing?
Well, I've always been really interested in the body ever since I was young, and my mother's always been quite open towards alternative therapies. So we would always see osteopaths and homeopaths and use, rescue remedy and things like this when we were young. And when I was 13 or 14, I just found it really difficult when I was in school to be a part of the system that was, I don't know what was going on there. It was just very difficult for me to be in a normal system. So I decided to leave school to teach myself. And in that process, at the same time, I was also experiencing anxiety and a lot of hormonal shifts. I mean, 13 to 15 is a big time for everyone, really, at that age. And I was just beginning to notice more and more how little grasp medical science had on this, giving like a 13 or 14-year-old girl, the pill, like hormonal, pills to regulate their emotions, or then putting, basically developing kids neurologically and hormonally, biologically developing children on Xanax or Zoloft. And it was never working for me. It was always something that within a week I was like, I just can't do this. And so it sent me into this deep exploration of alternative medicine and what it had to offer. And I continued with that until I was and I wanted to study to become maybe a doctor. And again, I couldn't stand it. I can't believe the way that we teach, the way that we live. And so I left again, and I decided to just follow my heart. And so I went back home. We're originally from New Zealand, and I just spent about 3 weeks being in silence with myself, and my heart said Melbourne. And so I went to Melbourne, and that's where I found the Shiatsu College where I studied. It's where I found my spiritual teacher. And it's also where I found my introduction to the feminine arts, the jade egg work, and the embodiment and movement aspects that are part of Sufism, which is my spiritual tradition, but really also part of every tradition. And that was really what led me down the path of understanding how powerful breath, sound, movement, meditation really is. And through this, and studying Japanese acupuncture and bodywork, I realized that that was really what my calling was how to feel more authentic and embodied, and actually bring the sublime into the day to day. And I just continued on that path until 4 years ago or so. I had a very direct transmission come through me, and I was guided how to channel this work, and I started, and that's basically been what all of my time and attention has gone into since.
Wow. So many questions. It's such a beautiful story and path, and so brave to break out from the norms in such an early part of your life. In your work right now, how are you practicing and teaching your what you have learned from your studies and what you're studying right now? How do you work practically with, I guess, with women and working with embodiment?
Well, I studied a lot of movement and somatics. So I'm also a yoga teacher. And so we do in the level 1 work a lot of movement, somatic movement and conscious movement through the form of yoga and sort of holding or yin yoga poses. So that comes out in the group work and the online work. And for me, that's very much about focus on breath and center of gravity. I mean, you can do one pose so many different ways, depending on where you put your attention and what your intention from your practice is. I mean, the same postures are in hatha as in vinyasa, but these are very different styles. And so I'm really working with this internal meditative practice for women to really awaken what's going on within them during the time they set aside for their practice as a time for them to be deeply in connection. I think a lot of people practice movement and they feel better after their class, like, oh, I'll go to the class, I'll feel better after. And the intention of this practice is that you feel incredible during the practice, that you feel that this is the time just for you, and that there's full permission to be however you need to be in that class, even if that means actually just lying down in the presence of other people for 90 minutes. So everything is permissible, and it's fully devotional time for yourself. And these threads also run through my body work. I run a clinic, and again, for me, it's very much that somebody is able to completely relax and go within. So while I'm working on the body, it's really about them having deeper access to their own spirit in that time. So I work in a very sort of massage style, and I do full body treatments, including internal, intravaginal body work. And in these 3 hours, it should just feel like a ritual. There's so much permission for everything when I'm working on the heart and the breast. Obviously, it's very emotional, it's very tender. We're working on the pelvis, so much can arise. And also reawakening the sense of what it means to be touched with love and without agenda when it comes to our labia or our sexual organs or our womb space or the whole pelvic bowl, internal or external. So it's really about a reconnection to yourself in the softest way. And I think that that's kind of the intention for all of it, is this way of how can we reclaim that incredible spiritual and sexual energy that each of us has, to be a source or a battery for us in our day-to-day life, and in a way that is feeling pure and not storing a lot of emotions or hurt or shame or trauma, but really is cleared out so that we have a sense of ourselves and how this really is our birthright in our day-to-day life. And I think that, this is so powerful. This is literally the reclamation, so to speak, that has been sweeping, our world for the last 6 to 10 years, I would say. And it's really reaching its culmination at this time with all of the divine feminine Christ consciousness awakening, so much rose lineage work awakening, and so much reclaiming of feminine consciousness and bodies, even the Me Too movement. I mean, this is a astrological climate at this stage. It's a generational climate of something that, it's deeply ancestral work, but it's work that needs to happen. There's a calling.
Yes, it's beautiful work. I think everything that you're doing is something that all women should work with in some way, because we all have, if we don't have traumas that we can identify with in this life, we have that in our lineage and as a collective. And it's really, when you start, either something triggers you that you have to do the work and you connect with it in that way. And that can be very, that means that you go into your shadows as well. So it's really tough work. It's kind of an awakening, but not maybe as what we imagine awakening is. We always imagine it like being some enlightenment, in like something that is bright and above, but this is about going like deep down into the darkness, as in the womb. So it's really about doing deep work, and sometimes it's not triggered through an event. I think it's more triggered also through curiosity, or through just recognizing something in it. I think it's so powerful, and I love connecting with other women that have this calling to be in service in this way, because it's healing the collective as well. So it's not just our own body and emotional body. And I love what you're doing. And I'm wondering also where you're based now, how this work is received.
Thank you for all those reflections. It's really beautiful. I'm based in Dubai now, mostly in the Middle East and North Africa region. And it's so interesting what you were just saying. There's so many different ways we encounter this work. Sometimes it is this big light enlightening where we just go, oh, I just need more pleasure in my life. And sometimes indeed it's more like the crack that is later where the light gets in. And I think that same diversity I do meet in this region. What's interesting about this region for me is that because I was involved in so much Sufi activity when I was younger, that the culture makes an enormous amount of sense to me. I'm very familiar with Islam, and I'm familiar with the culture. And so there's a way that I connect to women in this part of the world that is it just feels like my calling. It's a fluidity. It's like being enough of something that you feel familiar to people, but being distant enough from it that they feel that they can trust, that they feel that they can trust you with things that maybe wouldn't be acceptable within, within the family or within the culture. So there's this really beautiful line of deep trust, and like sort of ancient knowing, but fresh remembering that happens when I'm working with women here. And it's the work, the internal work is something I generally don't do much of in the Gulf region, in this part, because it's not yet legal. And part of the Doctor of Osteopathy work that I'm doing is I would like to bring internal bodywork to become legal in this part of the world, and at very least in Dubai. I have had a lot of friends here who are physios and osteos who have a specialization in internal pelvic work, in adjustments and assisting after birth. And even though that's part of their professional, fully rebated, completely accepted medical model training, they're still not allowed to practice that in these parts of the world. And for me, when I think of that, I might think of OBGYNs and the fact that home birth is illegal in most places in the region. I just see so much pioneering to be done. And I actually think it's incredible, because I would rather work in a place where when these things come about, they're coming about for the first time. It's such a clean slate to generate a model of home birth from the get-go, that, not trying to reinvent something or trying to remove stigmas. For example, in Australia and Melbourne, it's very difficult with that whole issue. But here it's very fresh. So if we come at it in the right way, and they're so open, they are really, there is such a pioneering spirit of enlightenment and awakening in this part of the world. There's such a hunger for advancement, but also such a deep dedication to tradition. And I see it as the most fertile ground for a calling of this sort. And I really hope that I can shift some of the perceptions around clinic work when it comes to internal work and womb work, but also around birth. And it is illegal, that work currently. So I tend to just do more body work here and group work and online sessions, obviously during COVID. That's been a thing. And then I do quite a lot of the internal body work in Egypt. And and that hasn't been an issue at all. So I think that it just depends where in the region you're based, who you know, how you're practicing. But I think overall it's just a balance of being respectful to the needs of the people who are coming to see you, and then also mindful and respectful of the cultures that are hosting you. And I think that's, just trying to do that in a mindful but also ideally sophisticated way that hopefully can make some lasting change.
Yeah, the work that you do and the energy that you bring to this place is so important, I think, because there is still me being a Middle Eastern myself, and there is still a lot of awakening in the collective that needs to be for the whole world. But also when it comes to, maybe we can see the legal things as the surface, right? That's like when we break through that, it's great, and then we have to break through also the consciousness and awareness of it. But from how I grew up, it's still very based, as you said, in tradition, but also the roots of spirituality is always there. So it can be there's a different strategy to creating change in these areas. And it's really about coming back to the roots of how things have been done before the industrialization and because in my culture we still use very natural remedies and like just a little bit of the old wisdoms, how people used to heal and use food as healing and things like that. So it's a really interesting region that you're in. And I think what you're saying and with your study is that there can be a lot of shifts. And I see more and more also here in Sweden, like more and more interest in the rights of birth, for example. Okay, here in Sweden, we have, since I'm also very interested in birth work and have been for the past few weeks also working in a maternity ward, and we one thing that is unique here is that and might be in more countries, but we have midwives that are responsible at birth. And there has also been a surge of like free birth and also birthing at home. And up until recently, this was also funded by, like, having midwives at home was funded in Stockholm, but it was also taken out, I think, recently. So it's a lot of movement here too, to like you have the right to give birth here wherever you want, but also getting the support from society is important, because then we get to normalize it a little bit and also give the opportunity to everyone and not just those that can afford it and have those funds. So, and this is fundamental in creating an awareness around what birth is, because birth is also the beginning of all life. So if that is not prioritized in society, then what is? If the process of birth and the female body is not honored, then what should be honored in? I'm just like really really amazed that this hasn't been the case, and but I'm happy that it's starting to awaken in everyone right now. So I'm really curious about your practice and Sufism, actually, how you got into that and what is the foundations of that and how does it translate in your work?
Yeah, that's a beautiful question. And I just want to say I really appreciate everything you just said. I think that it's very difficult for people who have, I found recently in the last years more surges of women who are not mothers becoming interested in birth work. And I really do feel like it's our final frontier of reclaiming the ownership of and the celebration of the power of the feminine. And I think that it really is an epicenter of trauma. And I also appreciate what you said about the support and the funding and the government support. And when you said, the legal aspect is kind of it's the superficial representation of the larger problem. And yet simultaneously, when the government says, yes, we support this, or when a government says, you have the right to access this type of care, it immediately floods it allows everyone the capacity to begin a conversation. And it's the conversation that's so necessary. But if it's illegal to even have the conversation because the practices aren't supported, then we just find ourselves in a place where, we really have to look at who we are as a society and a world and our relationship to, as you said, life itself. And that's the same in environmental issues as it really is in birth, which may feel like a leap for many people, but it really isn't. It really truly is about how we honor the mother and the life that we all live together. And so it's something really powerful that you just spoke into and really touched my heart. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's so curious with the Sufi aspect here. I think it's so interesting. It's a frequency. It's just a transmission or a frequency that every human body has the same energetic anatomy, but how we cultivate that anatomy That depends on the tradition or the lineage that we take part in, because it's a transmission that we're taking. So it's interesting, if you do a certain form of yoga, you might be very spinal centric. You might have a sort of blue color to your energy. If you do a certain other thing, you might, have these different centers lit up, because how we focus our awareness is also how we shape our energy. And while everything leads to one, there are different pathways we can cultivate for that awakening, and different traditions teach different ones. And I think that I just spent so much time with my Sufi teachers and in that practice that I seem to have encoded my system with a very compatible frequency for the climate that I live in here in Dubai and Saudi. And it's just, yeah, I also find that met very much in Cairo and Egypt as well, where there's a huge Sufi population. It's interesting. Often it's not something I'll speak about. Most of the people I treat don't off the bat know, that I am Sufi. But there is this draw in the heart of the ancestral lineages, that there is something of a frequency that is shared, and it generates a really interesting bond and trust. And yourself, your own ancestry, we found each other for this talk. I did also some work with Sheila Kamara Hay, who does ecstatic birthing, and she's also originally from Iran. And it's really interesting, the women that I find on my path, even when it isn't in this part of the world, and that ancestry, there's some call there. I do have some blood from this part of the world. My father is half Welsh, and so he's actually got quite a lot of Moorish blood, because the Moors came into Wales. So my sister and my father is slightly different color than us as well, and my sister's got sort of very Persian looking features, actually, which is beautiful. But there's definitely something there which I feel is both vibrational and embodied, and there is just a frequency. So it doesn't really show up like me holding your hands before a session and saying Al-Fatiha or some kind of prayer or something, but rather it kind of just shows up in this magnetism that happens on some deep level, and it's just undeniable. There are certain doors and frequencies that open that colleagues haven't found there, and I just know within me that it is that frequency of Sufism. It is that reverence for the language of devotion in this part of the world. Every path has their own language of devotion, and I think that my field has just been blessed with the experience of the language of devotion that belongs here. And so it shows up in so it's not on the surface, it's not a conscious or a thought out thing. It's just a path, and it's just led me deeper and deeper, and I couldn't be more grateful.
Wow. Yeah, I could really just dive into everything that you're talking about. It's so beautiful. I resonate with it so much, and it makes so much sense that we connected today, because there's so much synchronicity. And yeah, your work is so beautiful. I also felt just drawn to your energy, I think, without really realizing how how our work is also very synced in that way. So I really appreciate that. And I would actually love to have another conversation with you around birth work and that whole area, because it's a big topic and it's so important, because this is also something that really empowers women in their body, those who choose and can have a child. It's really something magical with that. And also on the other side, women who don't, like, how is that creativity, what are we birthing then? So I think that would be a great topic to talk about. And meanwhile, I would love for you to share how people can connect with you if they want to do some work with you online or in Dubai.
Yeah, perfect. I would love to have that conversation. It's such a deep passion of mine, and I couldn't. Yeah, it's so beautiful. If people would like to connect with me, I think the easiest way is we are really active on Instagram. Our handle is underscore Golden Lotus underscore. And all of the work that we do is available online at goldenlotusdxb.com. And you can find the link also through our link tree on Instagram.
Great. I'll make sure to just put everything in the show notes so people can connect with you. And I just want to thank you so much for joining today. I really appreciate it. It was so beautiful and energizing. I'm so happy that you took your time today.
Thank you so much, Shireen. It's been so beautiful to connect with you.
Thank you so much for listening today. I hope this episode helped spark an interest within you to work a little bit deeper with embodiment, and that it helps you on your path and spiritual awakening. And if you want to connect with Eva, which I highly recommend that you do if you want to do this work, you can find all her links in the show notes, and she offers so much beautiful things on her website. So I hope you enjoyed. Let's take a deep breath in through the nose and sigh it out through your mouth. And namaste.